Across the span of human history, warfare has not only been a contest of strength and fortitude, but also a grim theater of cunning and horror. Envision the murky depths of the 16th century Chinese oceans turned into unseen graveyards by the silent, waiting naval mines, ready to unleash devastation upon the unsuspecting hulls of ships. Picture the dense, lush jungles of Vietnam, where the ground itself cannot be trusted, and the trees hide dreaded mace traps, ready to violently maim. And amidst the chaos of World War II, imagine the desperation and dark thoughts that led to the training of anti-tank dogs. These animals compelled to carry explosives towards enemy armor, a disturbing reality of the lengths to which conflict can drive humanity. Armies and resistance fighters, faced with overwhelming odds or the need for tactical advantage, have time and again resorted to the earth and their surroundings to craft mechanisms of defense and offense alike. But what is the limit that drives the creation of such fearsome devices, and how have they altered the fates of armies, battles, and indeed, entire wars? These unique and violent traps, varying from the simple yet brutal punji sticks and Roman caltrops to the unexpected danger posed by a rigged umbrella cane unleashing acidic doom upon the unsuspecting, illustrate the sinister art of warfare tactics throughout history. One poignant statement that can be applied to this form of warfare comes from Sun Tzu, the legendary Chinese military strategist. All warfare is based on deception. When using our forces, we must appear inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near. Join us as we traverse the centuries and the globe, unveiling the dark ingenuity of combatants forced to the edge of desperation, employing brutal traps that have maimed, destroyed, and killed. Welcome to the Chronicles of the Raven. Chapter 1. The Vietnam War. We commence our exploration with the Vietnam War, a war renowned for its cunningly simplistic yet insidiously lethal booby traps. Imagine walking through a dense jungle, your eyes scanning for the unseen enemy, when suddenly the earth gives way beneath your foot. You feel a sharp pain as multiple bamboo spikes, honed to lethal sharpness, pierce through your boot and into your flesh. These aren't just any spikes, these are punji sticks, a trap so fiendishly simple yet so effective that it became a symbol of the Vietnam War. What made these traps particularly insidious wasn't just the immediate injury they caused, but the aftermath. Viet Cong guerrillas often smeared these bamboo spikes with feces, ensuring that even a minor wound could turn into a life-threatening infection. Other additional sinister coatings include poison from plants or animal venom. The psychological impact of these traps was profound, instilling a pervasive fear that turned the jungle itself into an enemy. With that image firmly lodged in your mind, now picture a trap designed not just to maim, but to kill. The human-sized pits with excrement-coated punji sticks. These larger pits were like gruesome wells, their depths hidden by foliage, waiting for an unwary soldier to fall into their embrace. They were designed to kill, or at the very least, ensure you'd never fight again. The punji sticks are only the beginning, as alongside them were the spiked mudballs and mudball mines. Primitive in their construction, but deadly in their application. Hidden along the paths or even suspended from trees, these dried balls of mud were infused with deadly bamboo stakes, waiting for a tripwire to activate a swing of death straight into a soldier's skull. Additionally, in a twisted variation, they would also put grenades inside buried mudballs, ready to rain shrapnel on passing troops. As the pins from the grenades were removed and cased within mud or clay, simply brushing against a seemingly innocuous clump of mud could trigger a lethal explosion due to the trap's fragility. Bamboo also became the material for another horrifying device, the bamboo whip. This device consisted of a long, flexible bamboo pole, often reinforced with sharpened bamboo stakes or metal spikes along its length, turning it into a lethal weapon. The bamboo whip was meticulously camouflaged and strategically placed along jungle paths or near enemy encampments, its presence betrayed only by the nearly invisible tripwires that lay across the soldier's path. The pole was bent and held in tension, typically anchored to the ground or tied to a tree, with the tripwire connected to the restraining mechanism. When an unsuspecting soldier triggered the wire, either by stepping on it or brushing past, the restraint was released. This allowed the bamboo pole to snap forward or sideways with tremendous force, propelled by the built-in tension. The speed of the whip's movement was startling, giving soldiers little to no time to react. Those caught in its path would be struck with the full force of the whipping bamboo, the added spikes causing deep, penetrating wounds. The severity of these injuries could be fatal, especially if vital areas were hit or if the spikes were coated with poison or other infectious materials. If this were the full list, that would be enough for a lifetime of trap exposure. But you should also know that Vietnam had the bamboo stick cartridge trap to present another level of unseen danger. Hidden within the bamboo tubes, bullets lay in wait for the pressure of a foot to turn the ground beneath into a shooter. The idea that the very act of stepping could trigger a bullet firing upwards created a constant state of tension among troops, further hampering their movement and morale in already challenging conditions. Tripping on a wire and looking out for spiked balls is bad enough, but now a bullet shooting from the floor. Fear only grows. A cartridge was placed inside a small hollow bamboo tube or a similarly constructed device with the bullet facing upward. This tube was then anchored securely in the ground, camouflaged to blend seamlessly with the natural environment. A pressure plate, often made from a thin piece of bamboo or wood, was placed over the top of the tube with a pin or sharp object positioned directly above the cartridge's primer. When a soldier stepped on the pressure plate, their weight forced the pin into the cartridge's primer, igniting the gunpowder and causing the bullet to shoot upwards. The surprise and force of the bullet firing could cause significant injury to the foot or leg, not to mention the shock and confusion such an unexpected trap could provoke. In some instances, the cartridge trap was modified to trigger not just a single cartridge, but a series of them. If that was too real, then imagine pits filled with snakes and the added terror from something straight out of a nightmare. The thought of not just falling, but being bitten by venomous snakes as you lay trapped added a critical psychological layer to the Viet Cong's repertoire of traps. While these pits were covered in the same way as punji stick traps, these pits concealed a large amount of bamboo pit vipers instead. The moment a soldier fell in, the snakes, disturbed, agitated, and hungry, would attack. Covered in biting vipers, the soldier faced venomous bite after venomous bite. These vipers, known as two-step snakes, were feared for their deadly venom that could claim a life within minutes. Even more terrifying were the baby snakes, unable to control their venom, delivering a lethal dose in a single bite. There were always a large amount of vipers in the pit, and any soldier who fell in had almost no chance of surviving. The Viet Cong used these vipers in more ways than one, making the jungle itself a weapon. Soldiers carried these snakes in their packs, turning their own belongings into potential death traps if they were killed or captured. These deadly snakes also guarded the Viet Cong's elaborate tunnel systems. As American soldiers crawled through the dark, the last thing they expected to encounter was a venomous snake, ready to strike from the shadows. The fear of stumbling upon a pit viper in the dark added a layer of terror to the already daunting task of tunnel navigation. Viet Cong did not stop there. They booby-trapped their supplies with snakes, turning every discovered cache into a potential death trap. Whether it was weapons, food, or equipment, the threat of a hidden viper made every Viet Cong stash a dangerous gamble. This cunning use of natural predators turned the jungle and everything in it into a weapon of war. The tiger trap, although it might seem like a good follow-up to snake pits, did not use tigers. It was worse. Often reserved for use against larger groups or in crucial pathways, was a masterpiece of cruelty. Envision a massive spiked board hidden above, waiting for a tripwire to unleash it onto the unsuspecting. Usually a camouflaged board, often covered with foliage, that concealed a framework of spikes capable of impaling a man with the force of a tiger's bite. As a soldier stepped onto the seemingly solid ground, the false cover would give way, plummeting the victim into a spiked grave below. One of the most deadly traps of the Vietnam War was the mace. This sinister trap, much like the medieval weapon it's named after, consisted of a heavy, spiked head attached to a bamboo pole. Viet Cong guerrillas would carefully select locations along well-trodden paths or near strategic points where the presence of American and Allied troops was anticipated. The trap itself was ingeniously crafted from materials readily available in the environment. A large spiked head, often made from wood or bamboo, outfitted with sharpened spikes, was attached to a flexible bamboo pole or vine, serving as the swing arm. This lethal apparatus was then suspended from trees, or hidden within the dense foliage, camouflaged to blend seamlessly with the natural surroundings. A tripwire, nearly invisible amongst the underbrush, was strategically placed across the path. As a soldier unknowingly triggered the wire by stepping on it or brushing against it, the tension released, causing the mace head to swing down or across with deadly force. The speed and momentum of the swing ensured that the spikes inflicted maximum damage, capable of causing severe injuries or death to anyone caught in its path. The trap's design meant that it could be triggered by the simple act of moving through the jungle, turning routine patrols into potentially fatal endeavors. Finally, there is the deceptive simplicity of grenades used as traps in the aptly named flagpole grenade traps. Rigged to detonate via tripwires or even by the act of lowering a flag, they turned routine actions into potential death sentences. One can only but imagine thinking about raising the flag upon a conquered base, only to be met with yet another trap. Additionally, grenades would be used in tin cans and foodstuffs, either individually or in a chain reaction. Every step, every gesture in the jungle could lead to an explosion, a constant reminder of the unseen, persistent threat posed by the Viet Cong. Walking equals death, stepping equals death, eating equals death. In response to the Viet Cong's tactics against the United States, Project Elitist Sun was executed, a covert operation by US forces during the Vietnam War, intricately designed to undermine the Viet Cong's confidence in their weaponry. This cunning strategy involved tampering with the Viet Cong's ammunition supplies. Specific rounds were modified to explode when fired, turning the user's weapon into an unpredictable firearm of self-destruction. The operation targeted small arms and mortar shells, replacing gunpowder with a high explosive compound that generated excessive pressure upon firing, leading to catastrophic failure of the weapon. The brilliance of Project Elitist Sun lay in its psychological warfare aspect. By tampering with only a small fraction of ammunition, it sowed a pervasive atmosphere of fear and paranoia among Viet Cong fighters. Soldiers were left doubting the reliability of their firearms, with the potential for their weapon to turn against them at any moment. This fear was intensified by a disinformation campaign, falsely attributing the faulty ammunition to deliberate sabotage by the Viet Cong's allies, further eroding trust and cohesion among enemy forces. Despite the operation's secrecy, it became known through leaks, leading to its eventual discontinuation. Through these traps, the Viet Cong managed to turn their knowledge of the terrain and their limited resources into a formidable weapon that not only injured and killed, but deeply affected the psyche of their opponents. The jungle was no longer just a physical battlefield. It became a realm of fear, where every step could be your last. The horrors of these traps, from the punji sticks to the tiger traps, underline the grim reality of warfare and the lengths to which people will go to defend their homeland. Chapter 2. World War II. Before diving into the traps of water and other crucial historical battles from Korea to Scotland, we pivot back through the corridors of time, leaving the sweltering jungles of Vietnam, and we teleport to another period of warfare that shaped our world, World War II. The era when innovations weren't constrained to just machinery and tactics, but also to the terrifying traps designed to destroy enemy troops. At a time where the very effective landmines began, and have since become as populated as an invasive species of locust, there have always been more creative ways to destroy enemies. The Germans, known for their engineering prowess, as potent as their evil leader, crafted one of the most infamous mines known to the battlegrounds of World War II, the Bouncing Betty. Unlike the mines that detonate upon contact, these sinister devices were designed to leap up to waist height before exploding. The objective? To maximize injury potential by dispersing shrapnel over a broader range, ensuring not one but multiple casualties. Imagine, in a split second, the ground beneath your feet, a supposed sanctuary, becomes a harbinger of death, catapulting lethal fragments in a deadly spray. It was not just a trap, it was a psychological weapon where it was not only the knowledge of your impending death, but in that you knew how it would arrive, instilling fear with every step trodden on foreign soil. Now picture the dismay of soldiers, fatigued and famished from battle. Hunger, a basic human instinct, turns into a lethal gamble as Germans ingeniously rigged canned goods with explosives. A simple act of seeking sustenance could result in a violent death. And then there was the explosive box with cats, a testament to the depths of human depravity when skewed towards destruction. A box, perhaps once a symbol of hope or supplies, now a deadly trap, with the innocuous sound of a cat designed to lure the unsuspecting to their demise. The German approach to booby traps during the war introduced a diabolical twist to psychological warfare, with anti-officer bombs serving as a prime example. These devices were insidiously designed to exploit human tendencies for order and curiosity, turning routine actions into potentially fatal mistakes. By embedding explosives within everyday objects or structures, the Germans aimed not just to kill, but to instill a pervasive sense of paranoia and fear while doing routine dailies. One of the most cunning implementations of this concept was the rigging of objects as mundane as a picture frame. Officers, upon entering a newly secured or abandoned building, might find a picture hanging askew. Driven by a natural inclination to adjust the frame to its proper alignment, this simple act of touching the frame could trigger an explosion. The mechanism behind such a trap could involve a delicately balanced detonator, connected to the frame in such a way that moving the picture would disturb the setup, causing the bomb to detonate. Another sinister application involved buildings designated or expected to serve as command posts. Anticipating the strategic patterns of their adversaries, the Germans would rig these structures with explosives, hidden within walls or under floors, or in seemingly benign objects. The activation mechanisms varied, from pressure plates to tripwires, or even time delay systems designed to detonate at a later stage, adding an element of unpredictability and terror. Fear means that one does not need to be present in order to cause paranoia. The simple thought that your enemy is there at all times is enough. Far from the officers' quarters, born from desperation and the dire need for effective countermeasures against the rolling steel behemoths of World War II, the anti-tank dogs were a tragic chapter of military history. Trained with relentless rigor by both German and Russian forces, these loyal canines were strapped with explosives and taught to seek refuge under enemy tanks. The heart-wrenching moment of detonation, when the battlefield sound was pierced by the silent sacrifice of these four-legged soldiers, speaks volumes of the war's profound desperation. Each explosion marked not just the destruction of a tank, but underscored the depths of humanity's vile nature, turning the bond between man and dog into a weapon of war. You feel the outrage and disgust, do you not? But creativity and cruelty was not restricted to the European front. The Japanese also devised traps that not only aimed to kill, but also to shock and awe. Imagine any sort of apparatus from your daily life, from simply cooking your meal in an oven, staring at your favorite painting, or even using a toothbrush. Who knows where a trap could lie? Who would ever think that something as mundane as a mechanical pencil could become a harbinger of death? These devices were designed to exploit the basic human tendencies of curiosity and the search for utility, transforming everyday objects into lethal threats. The implementation of such traps revealed a profound understanding of psychological warfare, intending to instill fear and paranoia among enemy troops. The mechanical pencil booby trap is a prime example of this insidious creativity. At first glance, it was indistinguishable from a standard writing instrument. Soldiers, upon finding them, would naturally pocket these seemingly benign tools for later use. However, these pencils were rigged with a small explosive charge and a triggering mechanism. When the pencil was used in the intended manner, twisting the shaft to extend the graphite, it instead activated the explosive. The mechanism likely involved a simple but effective setup where the twisting action either completed an electrical circuit or released a mechanical striker. The resulting explosion could cause serious injury or death, turning an act of writing into a potentially fatal endeavor. Similarly, flashlights and light bulbs were transformed from sources of light into sources of destruction. These were simply rigged to explode when they were activated, creating nighttime chaos. Even worse, the umbrella cane with burning fluid represents a cunning combination of everyday utility and concealed danger, reflecting the Japanese approach to unconventional warfare tactics. Any unsuspecting soldier that opened a trap umbrella would trigger a mechanism and break the seal of the reservoir. This action could release the pressurized or stored flammable liquid, which would then be ignited by a chemical reaction or a small hidden igniter similar to those found in lighters. The result was a sudden and unexpected projection of burning fluid over your head and body, with zero expectation. A horrifying weapon that could inflict severe burns and chaos without warning should you survive. As a soldier in World War II, you also might encounter the bamboo stick floor trap. This exemplifies the utilization of natural resources and terrain knowledge to create effective defensive measures. The trap consisted of a bamboo stick sharpened at one end and split into two to create a kind of natural tweezer, camouflage to protrude out of the floor. The genius of this trap lay in its pressure activation mechanism. When an enemy soldier stepped on the floor, their weight would force the two split ends of a bamboo stick together, which were modified to complete an electrical circuit. This action would then detonate the explosive charge. Not only could this trap maim or kill by the explosion itself, but even if the explosive failed to detonate, the infected sharp bamboo could still impale the foot of the soldier, causing serious injury and infection. Reflecting on the traps of World War II, we confront not just the ingenuity of humans in survival, but the stark reminder of how that same creativity turns sinister in the theater of war. Chapter 3. The Power of Water Traps and Naval Mines. In the shadowed waters of global conflict, naval mines have evolved from crude but deadly deterrents to sophisticated guardians of the deep seas, shaping naval strategy and coastal defenses. The earliest recorded use of naval mines dates back to the 14th century, with the Chinese innovators of the Ming dynasty laying the groundwork for underwater warfare. The Huolongjing military works meticulously detailed naval explosives that set the stage for centuries of naval mine development. These early naval mines, as described in the Huolongjing, were essentially rudimentary but incredibly effective explosive devices intended to protect waterways from invading enemy ships. Constructed from cast iron and filled with gunpowder, these mines were designed to float at or just below the water's surface, anchored to the riverbed or seafloor by ropes or chains. The triggering mechanism for these mines was relatively simple, yet cleverly conceived. They were equipped with a series of triggers or contact horns made of lead or other materials. When an enemy ship collided with these horns, the impact would break open a container within the mine, mixing two chemical components that would ignite the gunpowder charge, causing a powerful explosion. This concept of using contact to trigger an explosive charge was revolutionary for its time and laid the foundational principles for the development of naval mines. And not just that, but really the future of traps. The Huolongjing's detailed accounts of these early explosive devices not only demonstrate an advanced understanding of chemical reactions and their military applications, but also show a strategic approach to warfare, aiming to create defensive perimeters in waterways and deter enemy naval advances. The use of naval mines, as described in the Huolongjing, had significant strategic implications. By deploying these mines in rivers, estuaries, and coastal waters, Chinese military strategists could protect key locations from naval incursions without the need for constant manned guarding. This not only conserved military resources, but also introduced a new element of surprise and psychological warfare, as enemy forces had to navigate the treacherous waters, knowing the hidden danger that lay beneath. Following this, as you can imagine sailing on ships and submarines throughout the ages, the evolution of naval mines continued, with each chapter adding depth and complexity. The 18th and 19th centuries witnessed the broadening scope of mine warfare, transcending oceans and continents. The innovation of naval mines was not confined to a single theater, but became a global phenomenon, with nations across the world recognizing their potential to control seas and protect shorelines. Now, imagine yourself in the land of the Dutch in the early 17th century. The Dutch waterline, a remarkable example of military ingenuity and the strategic use of natural landscapes, stands as a testament to the Netherlands' centuries-long struggle against both invading armies and the encroaching sea. This elaborate defense system, first conceived in the early 17th century and refined over the years, harnessed the power of controlled flooding to create an almost impregnable barrier protecting the heartland of the Dutch Republic and later the Netherlands. The Dutch waterline was not a singular construction but a network of dikes, sliding gates, canals, and floodplains designed to be deliberately activated in times of threat. This concept of using water as a defensive weapon was born out of necessity in a country where much of the land lay below sea level. The system's brilliance lay in its simplicity and effectiveness, By opening these gates at strategic points, defenders could flood the land with a shallow layer of water, too deep for men to wade through and too shallow for boats to navigate, creating a natural barrier against advancing forces. Over the centuries, the waterline was expanded and modernized, incorporating fortified cities, bastions, and fortresses that dotted the landscape like stone sentinels guarding the watery shield. These fortifications were strategic masterpieces in their own right, equipped to sustain sieges and provide firepower support across the submerged lands. The waterline's defensive capability was such that it was only breached once during the French invasion of 1672, and even then, due to a combination of exceptionally cold weather that froze the water and the treachery of local collaborators. The Dutch waterline's most significant test came during the Second World War, when the Netherlands once again faced the prospect of invasion. Despite advancements in warfare technology that had made the waterline seemingly obsolete, the Dutch commanders activated the system in a desperate bid to slow the German advance. Although ultimately unsuccessful in preventing the occupation, the waterline's activation served as a symbolic gesture of the Dutch resistance and the enduring spirit of a nation defined by its relationship with water. However, 7 centuries earlier, deep within the Korean peninsula, water was already being used as an ally. The tale of General Gangamchan and the Battle of Gwiju emerges not just as a chapter of military brilliance, but as a saga of the indomitable spirit of a nation under siege. Amidst the turmoil of the 11th century, with the Korean peninsula threatened by the formidable Khitan forces, General Gang, then over 70 years old, demonstrated a masterclass in defensive strategy that would etch his name into military legend. Employing the environment as his ally, he constructed a cunning trap by blocking a crucial stream with a dam made of cowhide, creating an illusion of passability that lured the Khitan army into a deadly snare. As the Khitan troops confidently traversed the seemingly tiny stream, General Gang unleashed the full fury of nature by tearing down the dam at the pivotal moment. The unleashed waters, rising with sudden and ferocious force, created chaos among the invaders, disrupting their ranks and sweeping them away in a torrential onslaught. This brilliant stroke not only capitalized on the element of surprise, but turned the very landscape into a weapon of war, showcasing a profound understanding of terrain and psychological warfare. The aftermath of this trap was devastating for the Khitan forces, who suffered a catastrophic defeat, with only a handful of soldiers escaping the wrath of the swollen river and the strategic might of Goryeo defenders. This resounding victory at Gwiju not only halted the Khitan aggression, but solidified General Gang's legacy as a defender of his homeland, earning him the highest governmental honors and the eternal gratitude of his nation. As with all of the most horrible traps in history, there is a constant need to deceive and destroy, consistently harking back to the art of war. But what other notable events in history occurred that resulted in the destruction and formation of civilizations? Chapter 4. The unique traps from around the world. Before investigating other booby traps, consider first a non-war trap designed to prevent human thieves from robbing graves of those who had died in war. The cemetery gun. Imagine the scenario. In the eerie quiet of the night, amidst the headstones of the 18th and early 19th centuries, the cemetery gun lay in wait, a silent guard watching the remains of the departed. This peculiar device, mounted on a swiveling base and set with a tripwire, was the grave digger's secret ally against the disturbing activities of grave robbers. As moonlight filtered through the ancient oaks, casting long shadows over the graves, the unsuspecting thief, driven by greed or morbid curiosity, would trigger the mechanism. The blast, sudden and thunderous in the stillness, would echo through the tombstones, a grim reminder of the sanctity of the grave. In this arena, where respect for the dead was enforced by the lead judgment of the cemetery gun, the line between the living and the departed was fiercely defended, sacrificed in life for the whims of conquest, and protected in death by those same weapons. While the history of war is a pendulum that always seems to oscillate towards conflict in a perversion of innocence, the modern era has seen the emergence of exploding toys, a sinister marriage of childhood symbols and warfare's ruthlessness. Picture the heart-wrenching scene. Amidst the rubble of conflict, a brightly colored toy lies seemingly abandoned, an oasis of normalcy for a child in a war-torn world. Yet, this beacon of childhood joy is but a facade for the indiscriminate cruelty of war. As a father of the next generation reaches out, compelled by a momentary forgetfulness of war, the detonation shatters more than the immediate silence. It breaks the very notion of sanctuary in conflict. The use of exploding toys not only inflicts physical harm, but erodes the psychological safe spaces, a chilling reminder that in the theater of war, innocence is the first casualty. However, some battles in history were needed for a people to survive against those that sought only to destroy. As we traverse now to Scotland, the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314 serves as a classic example of the dire consequences of underestimating terrain and the ingenuity of foes in medieval warfare. The English, marching into Scotland to confront Robert the Bruce, failed to conduct proper reconnaissance of the battlefield. This oversight led the English knights, clad in heavy armor and mounted on their steeds, to charge headlong into a meticulously prepared field of disguised stake traps and caltrops, once again showing that the legacy of ancient traps from Rome operated as some of the earliest warfare traps. These concealed defenses ensnared the cavalry, throwing the English formation into disarray and contributing significantly to the Scottish victory. In remembrance of this cunning defense and the crucial role it played in securing Scottish independence, Clan Drummond adopted the motto "Gang warily," translating to "step carefully." This serves as a timeless reminder of the strategic importance of terrain awareness and the devastating impact of environmental traps in warfare. In the modern age, the nature of horrible traps takes on a different appearance, but nonetheless, the use of improvised explosive devices, IEDs, remote and autonomous explosive traps, and other chemical and fiery devices are all evolutions of the most brutal traps in history. And while this was not an exhaustive list, it was certainly a unique look into the darkness of the human mind. So much so that the most horrible traps used in World War I, the Byzantine Empire, and the Roman Empire have their own videos that explain some of the most pivotal battles in history and how traps defined them.